let's turn to our guest here in the studio, Julien Barlan, an economist. Let me tell you, an economist who will be read in one of France's most or best read newspapers tomorrow morning, of course. A man writing very much about the crisis at the moment and finding time to join us here live on France 24. We appreciate your time, sir.
Well, thank you.
My basic question, and it is a basic question because my understanding of this is only the understanding of the man in the street. Okay, so make it simple for me.
I will.
Is Greece at the end of the line?
Probably yes.
Seriously, out of the euro?
Well, it'll depend on the outcome of the referendum on Sunday, but most likely if the Greeks back their Prime Minister Tsipras, and pretty much say no to the creditors, then yes, it'll most likely have to leave the Eurozone.
So Tsipras, Varoufakis coming in for a lot of criticism
Yes.
from people about the way they've handled this.
Well, they've handled this with, I believe, a very radical agenda. They have been...
Is that a bad thing?
Well, they have been elected on that agenda, but at the same time, there are economic realities that must be taken into account, in my opinion. And really, they haven't, and that is a problem.
What is clearly they've got a responsibility to the people who voted for them, as you said, their political responsibility. But like you say, the economic aspects of this, would it be as bad for Greece and as bad for Europe as everybody is saying if this Grexit happens?
Yes, I believe so. I believe that the consequences for Greece would be pretty bad. I believe that Greece would be exposed to high inflation. I believe that going back to their own currency and devaluing it isn't going to be efficient because the Greek economy, as it is constructed, only 16% of its GDP is due to the manufacturing sector. It is very little, it's very low, and of course, going back to its own currency isn't going to help.
And of course, the Tsipras-Varoufakis idea of taxing the businesses, taxing the
it'll
wealth
just make the
creators,
crisis worse. It'll make things worse.
Is that just a political difference, i.e. a sort of like a conservative against a sort of socialist agenda?
Probably, yes, but not only. I mean, you have to look at the reality. For instance, France has loaned 40 billion euros to Greece. It's about 600 euros per French taxpayer. It's a lot of money, and just by saying that, we can default on the debt would be without consequences, like the French president said today, is, I believe, completely false. For the reason, again, that 600 euros per taxpayer would be at stake.
That's it. It's easy for people to forget that Germany, Italy, France, everyone's exposed to the Greek
Exactly.
debt.
In 2012, pretty much the sovereign European nations have taken over the Greek debt, which used to be owned by private banks. So the risk, if you will, has been transferred from the private sector to the public sector. And who's behind the public sector? The taxpayers.
What about this idea of, and maybe this seems a bit silly to me as just a person, but I'm thinking about Greece, if it were a company, it would now be bankrupt completely. If Greece were a person, the bank would have foreclosed and sort of, dragged it in and hauled it up and said, look, pay back your debts, blah, blah. But the thing is, if you're giving them more money so they can pay back money, well, it kind of seems nonsensical, doesn't it?
Not exactly, because the money wouldn't just... The money would
Excuse me, it's a simple question,
no,
I'm a simple guy.
It's okay. The money wouldn't be given for free. The reason why there is the current stalemate is because Greece does not want to implement the economic reforms that the creditors are saying we want you to implement if you want this money. Because think about it. If Greece was able to put itself in this situation, obviously it'll happen again if nothing changes. So just saying we will erase the debt won't be enough. Erasing the debt will not be the right solution. Greece has to implement reforms, and if they do, they will get this money that they utterly need. And let me say one more thing. If Greece defaults on the IMF tomorrow, it'll most likely also default on its European counterparts in 2023 when it has to start repaying its European allies.
It sets a trend.
That's the trend, yes.
The former head of the IMF, Dominic Strauss-Kahn, who's known for many other reasons, is also a brilliant economist. He's calling for a payment break. He thinks that could help. Would it help? What do you think?
Well, you could maybe push the payments. You could push the deadlines if you really wanted to. But in order for us to agree to do that, for the creditors to agree to do that, you want Greece to implement a series of reforms. If they do agree to implement those reforms, then maybe we can talk about the way the debt will be repaid. But I want to stress on this. Implementing the reforms is really the key. If Greece does not implement those reforms, they will have to leave the Eurozone. I think we would enter an area of uncertainty. We don't want to enter that area. I'm very worried because the euro itself was not supposed to ever disappear. It is supposed to be the natural outcome of belonging to the European Union, and therefore I'm very concerned about that. I'm very concerned about the amount of money that is supposed to come back to France and might not come back to France, and I think it's a great deal of concern to me.
Julien Barlan, thank you, sir, very much
Thank
for
you.
joining us. We appreciate your time. Julien
of course.
Barlan, the economist, whose thoughts will be in Le Figaro.
That was actually on the Figaro today.
The Figaro, this morning it was on, so if you go onto their website, I'm sure you'll be able to read more about what Julien Barlan is saying about the Greek debt crisis. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.